Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's about time for me to release this long-awaited and much anticipated, and by that I mean the two people who have been asking me about this video every day, Sucrose character analysis. I really hope those two are happy right now. Regardless, since it's been a hot minute, yup. As I said, since it's been a hot minute since the last time I made such a video, I want to clarify that the objective of character analysis videos is to offer a holistic overview of a character's kit design within the context of the game that they inhabit, along with how a set character interacts with the game's mechanics, which influences their performance and their overall impact within the game. In other words, no, this is not a meta video, and I'm not trying to tell you what to play. We are looking into the mechanics that characters possess in their design, which causes players to play those characters in the first place, and whether those mechanics are good or bad. Anyway, let's just get on with the main video and talk about C12H22011. Yes, I know, I am very funny, haha, but for real, the reason I'm mentioning the chemical formula of sucrose is because it will be relevant, just not in this video. And yes, I do have better jokes to make, but again, I'm saving them for that future video, which will be a lore video, by the way, so for now consider it a vague Easter egg that very few of you will remember for this future video that I'll be releasing in an undisclosed time, because I don't want to make any more time commitments aside from the overabundant ones that I already have. Until then, welcome to this video about Sucrose, Genshin Impact's least popular, most widely acclaimed unit. Alright. Before we start, I must address the elephant in the room. Sucrose is surely an interesting character to say the least, because despite being one of the strongest and most versatile units in the entire game, Sucrose also happens to be one of the least used characters in all of Genshin Impact. And what's even more interesting about this situation that we find her in is that her low usage rate is not born out of the major negative downsides that she herself has, and when it comes to other aspects like characterization and aesthetic design, while Sucrose is definitely far from being the greatest character ever written, I think it is safe to say that she is not a character with any significant negative qualities. If you think about it, Sucrose is actually incredibly hard to dislike. In fact, I would wager that if I asked the vast majority of players, their opinion would be either that they like her characterization, being the conventional shy and kind but extremely intelligent introverted anime girl, or people would simply be indifferent. There isn't really much to not like about her because there isn't much that stands out about her to begin with, and this sentiment remains true for her character design as well. While there are some cool things we can point out and talk about, for all intents and purposes, she is basic. The point I'm trying to make is Sucrose doesn't have any major recoiling qualities about her that would cause players to not want to play her or dislike her. She is an extremely strong animal character with the ability to utilize Viridescent Rare, one of the best artifact sets in the entire game, to its full extent. She has good personal damage with incredible supportive capabilities that include team-wide damage amplification and crowd control. She has a decent design and is herself a decently written and easily likable character. She's an extremely easy character to build for those interested in quick and low investment, requiring virtually no talent levels to accomplish her job. And on top of all of that, Sucrose is a 4-star unit that has been around since Genshin Impact's inception, meaning that she is both easily accessible and very abundant in terms of how often players have had a chance to get her, and get her at high constellations, if I might add. So, obviously the question then becomes, how the heck does a character like Sucrose, who seemingly has everything going for her, end up as one of the least used characters in the game? Before I get to answering this question, I need to clarify something regarding the sources and methods of collection behind the usage data that I'm relying on, because they obviously come with their own set of assumptions and limitations, like all sets of data do. The data sets used for this video are based on Chinese servers, and it is collected from a portion of the Chinese player base, if I might add, not all of it, which means that we are not taking into account other regions across the board. This is important because Genshin Impact is an enormous game with approximately 60 million active players worldwide as of the time of recording of this video. However, Hoyoverse does not release any relevant official values, which means that the community sourced records are currently the best and most accurate methods of analyzing character usage, even if the sample size is relatively minor compared to the total number of players. Also, it is worth mentioning that when it comes to data sets representing character usage rates and percentages, it is important to understand that even if the data is sourced from one particular server, chances are the trends will remain largely consistent across other servers as well. What I'm talking about is based on a scientific mathematical predictive model known as inferential statistical extrapolation, which we use in engineering to analyze and project trends observed in a sample of data that is based upon the behaviors exhibited by a population of animals. Now, just to be clear, I have not performed any extrapolation on the data we got from the Abyss usages of patch 4.0 and 4.1. I frankly don't have time for that, but the reason I am mentioning any of this is because historically speaking, in the context of Genshin Impact, usage rates of characters tend to be similar enough between equivalent sample sizes across different servers. Look, I could go on and on about this topic and explain it further, but long story short, all of this is to say no one plays Sucrose. And the answer for as to why that is the case is simple. Everyone knows it. It's because of Kazuha. Ever since he was released all the way back in patch 1.6, Kazuha has been constantly compared and contrasted with Sucrose, and this has been talked about to the moon and back. Sucrose is better than Kazuha, you don't need Kazuha if you have Sucrose, Kazuha is better than Sucrose, why would you need both Sucrose and Kazuha? Don't pull for Kazuha, and so many other talking points like that. For those of you who have been playing the game since those days, you probably remember how poorly Kazuha's banner performed due to two major factors: being released right before Inazuma, right before Ayaka in particular, who was an extremely popular and widely anticipated character, along with so many people spreading this nonsensical sentiment that you shouldn't pull for Kazuha if you already have Sucrose. 2 years later, lo and behold, Kazuha has become a consistent household name in the Spiral Abyss, acting as a fundamental pillar for an enormous amount of team compositions, and is widely regarded as one of the strongest and most useful units in Genshin. While Sucrose is just Kazuha, but worse. That's why no one plays her, right? Well, unfortunately, the answer is both yes and no. And this is precisely where the root of the problem lies. Sucrose is not weaker Kazuha. Sucrose is not better than Kazuha. Sucrose is not competing with Kazuha to begin with. They are two different characters with certain overlapping functionalities. You see, this brain-dead argument that people used in the past to compare Kazuha and Sucrose to one another, which contributed to his initial low sales, has dramatically backfired over time once people came to realize just how good Kazuha is of a character, and because so many people are brainwashed into thinking that Kazuha and Sucrose are substitutes for one another, and due to the popular mischaracterization of him being a straight-up better version of Sucrose, hey, I have Kazuha, he's better Sucrose, now I no longer need Sucrose anymore, and so she ends up getting benched. But once again, that in of itself is the problem, because Sucrose and Kazuha are not the same character. Kazuha before C6 is an off-field reaction-based Anemo sub-DPS centered around boosting elemental damage of whatever he swirls, while Sucrose is a reaction-based animal on-field DPS, and a driver with elemental mastery boosting capabilities that can function as an off-field support as well. In other words, Sucrose is as similar to Kazuha as much as Tartaglia is similar to Yelan. One is a main DPS, while the other is a sub-DPS. Do you see it now? We have two different characters that share an element, which by extension means that they will obviously have some overlapping functionalities between one another by virtue of reactions. And please, don't get me started with that, but they both have grouping and Kazuha is better at grouping. Grouping is not limited to Kazuha and Sucrose. Every animal character has some form of displacement or crowd control, and by that logic, Barbatos has the best grouping in the game by far. This reminds me of back in the good old days before Kazuha came out. People used to compare Venti and Sucrose, and they say, you don't need Sucrose if you have Venti, which is so hilarious if you put it into perspective in our modern era, because not only does it go to show how stupid this whole comparison argument is, but also how unreasonable the comparisons can sometimes be. Regardless, I mentioned Tartaglia earlier while discussing the Kazuha-Sucrose comparisons, and that is perfect because my previous character analysis video was about Mr. Tortellini, and towards the end of that video, I mentioned that Sucrose, Alhaitham, and Tartaglia are the 3 most universal drivers in the game, and if you have those 3 built on your account, then you would be good to go for almost any encounter in the game when taking into consideration how good those 3 characters are and how strong the team compositions they utilize can be. Just to be clear, that doesn't mean other main DPS units can't be better, because I am primarily talking about universality. There are obviously other on-fielders who are extremely powerful by their own right, such as Nouvelle and Hu Tao, but those tend to have limited or very specific team compositions that require certain other characters, which reduce their overall flexibility. And on that note, Sucrose is an absolutely amazing DPS unit for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, her personal damage is extremely solid due to the fact that most of it comes from animal swirl reactions that in turn trigger other elemental reactions such as Electrocharge, Overload, Hyperbloom, etc. via the element being swirled or elemental infusion on her elemental burst absorption. And this is extremely important. You have to remember that Sucrose will be built with somewhere around 950 to 1300 elemental mastery, while also being equipped with Viridescent Veneraire, which will not not only mean that she'll be doing a high amount of swirl damage while simultaneously shredding Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, and Electro resistances by 40%, and then those elemental swirls will proc their own reactions based on Sucrose's level and elemental mastery, which will be ignoring 40% resistances if their damage happens to align with one of the elements being swirled. In addition to the fact that you can also get some Animo damage on the side too. I mean, she does have Animo damage Ascension stat, which honestly would have been significantly better had it been Energy Recharge or Elemental Mastery, but whatever. Now, the most important thing is that while Sucrose herself will be doing a lot of damage, you must also remember that she'll simultaneously be buffing her entire team by providing them with a baseline of 50 Elemental Mastery, in addition to 20% of her total Elemental Mastery from her passives, in addition to the Elemental damage from her C6, in addition to Viridescent Veneraire Elemental Shred, in addition to any of the other weapon buffs from the massive variety of weapons that Sucrose has access to, which include team buffing weapons such as Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayers and 1,000 Floating Dreams. To close things off, I think it goes without saying that this whole comparison BS is not an intelligent way to assess character strength. And if we learned anything from this video, then it should be that Sucrose is not a Kazuha clone, she is an on-field main DPS, so she is a Scaramouche and Hazo clone. Just kidding. Obviously, even those three have clear defining differences, because where Sucrose is an elemental master-based DPS, Scaramouche and Hazo are crit-based damage dealers, in addition to the fact that Sucrose can double dip as an off-field support buffer, which she does very, very well. But yeah, now to the outro. Alright, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you found it useful to some capacity or enjoyed it. And funny enough, I was looking back at my pull history and I realized that Sucrose was actually the very first character I ever pulled in all of Genshin Impact. And I'm not talking about the free-to-play Noel pull that they give you for free. I'm talking about just generally pulling characters from the rotation banners. Sucrose was the very first character I ever got, which is quite interesting to look back at 3 years later into the game, making this video on her and talking about how good she is, because back when I first got her, I didn't think much of her. Obviously, back then I didn't understand how the game worked and stuff like that. It wasn't even because people would tell me she's worse than Venti, it was simply I wasn't really interested in playing her. But obviously now that I know how she works, what she can do, and her playstyle is honestly really, really fun too, because pushing enemies around and then pulling them in, and then throwing her elemental burst and stuff like that. Plus she has a lot of weapon options like I mentioned. You can go with Sacrificial Fragments, which is my personal favorite for both energy recharge and damage. But you can also go for 1,000 Floating Dreams. She can go with this one, Wandering Evenstar. And she can also go with Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayers if you're playing her with someone like Beidou, who you know buff, or someone like Xiangling. But yeah, Sucrose is an absolutely amazing character. I have nothing really bad to say about her. Her playstyle is fun, she is ranged, which means she has an easier time driving team compositions. She has CC through her charge attack, through her elemental skill, and through her elemental burst. Lots of CC sources. So, very powerful character, very good character to build. Absolutely, you would never regret her, and her constellations are also very, very good. I mean, some of them are not that useful, but I know her C6 is pretty good if you get the elemental infusion. And yeah, she is a very powerful unit. But that is going to be all that I have to say for now. Thank you all for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next time.